Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to Sandal College Boys Section Online Class 8. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Here is Akhtar Said, your English teacher. First day in Class 8. First lesson. I pray for you. May Allah Almighty bless you all throughout your life. At the same time, on the first day of your new class 8, I would like to advise you to give due attention to your studies for better understanding. Dear students, first day, first lesson, that is a poem. When I heard the learned astronomer. Before embarking on today's lecture, I would definitely like to tell you something about the poet of the poem When I Heard the Learned Astronomer. The name of the poet is Walt Whitman, who was born in 1819 and died in 1892, worked as a journalist, a teacher, and a government clerk. His major work, Leaves of Grass, was a volume of poems that he kept adding to throughout his life. His style broke away from conventional poetry, and some of his poems seem very close to prose in their style. He wrote in free verse, यानी उन्होंने आज़ाद नज़म लिखी. And although he did not invent it, he is known as the father of free verse. अगरचे उन्होंने ये स्टाइल मुतारफ़ नहीं करवाया था, लेकिन उन्होंने आज़ाद नज़म इतनी खूबसूरत लिखी कि उन्हें बाबाए आज़ाद नज़म कहा जाने लगा. Whitman continues to be one of the most influential American poets. Now, dear students, I would like to discuss the summary of the poem briefly. When I Heard the Learned Astronomer. Walt Whitman first published When I Heard the Learned Astronomer in 1865 in his poetry collection Drum Taps. In this poem, the poet uses the example of an astronomer to show the difference between academic learning and experiential learning. यानी वो क्लासरूम में जो आप सीखते हैं उसमें और वो जो आप प्रैक्टिकली कुछ सीखते हैं अपने ज़ाती तजुर्बे की बिना पर, उसमें क्या फ़र्क है उसको विटमैन ने वाज़े करने की कोशिश की है. और यकीनन वो लर्निंग जो आप ज़ाती तजुर्बे के बाद हासिल करते हैं वो ज़्यादा इम्प्रेसिव होती है, वो ज़्यादा आपको समझ आती है, बजाय ये कि आप चंद एक चीज़ों को, फिगर्स को, नंबर्स को आप क्रैम कर लें, उन्हें रटा लगा लें. उसमें बड़ा फ़र्क होता है उस नॉलेज की निस्बत जो आप तजुर्बे से हासिल करते हैं. The speaker in the poem describes listening to a learned astronomer's lecture. He sees proofs and figures in columns before him, as well as charts and diagrams that he is supposed to analyze mathematically. At the end of the lecture, everyone else applauds the astronomer. Meanwhile, the speaker sits in the lecture room feeling sick and tired. वो बोर होता है. दूसरे जो स्टूडेंट्स होते हैं वो लेक्चर को एंजॉय करते हैं और तालियां बजा के तारीफ़ भी करते हैं एस्ट्रोनॉमर की, लेकिन इस स्पीकर को समझ नहीं आती, वो बोर होता है. When he goes out, he looks up into the sky and finally recognizes the magic of nature in the real sense and feels the beauty of twinkling stars above him. जबकि जब वो खुद बाहर निकलता है और रात के वक्त सितारों भरे आसमान को देखता है तो वो सितारों की खूबसूरती को और उनके बारे में तब से ही जान पाता है जब वो प्रैक्टिकली खुद देखता है. जबकि एस्ट्रोनॉमर ने जो उसे बताया था डायग्राम्स की शक्ल में, मैथमेटिकली उसे समझाने की कोशिश की थी, तब उससे बहुत ज़्यादा समझ नहीं आई, लेकिन जब उसने प्रैक्टिकली खुद देखा सितारों को आसमान पे तो तब उसको उनकी ज़्यादा समझ आई और वो कुदरत की खूबसूरती की तारीफ किए बगैर नहीं रह सका. Dear students, when I heard the learned astronomer. Dear students, this is a blank verse. It has 8 lines of one stanza. First 4 lines describe the atmosphere of the classroom, the lecture, and the last 4 lines show the reaction of the speaker. Let's start. When I heard the learned astronomer. Learned is the contraction form of learned. It means well educated. Astronomer. Astronomer means a scientist who studies stars, moons, planets, and other objects in space. He has complete knowledge of all these objects found in nature. When I heard, the speaker is there in the lecture room. He heard the lecture of this astronomer when the proofs means evidences, subut, the figures were ranged in columns before me. All the evidences that the astronomer brings in the class in the form of audio visual aids, he shows all these proofs in the class to his listeners, to his viewers, to his students. When I was shown the charts and diagrams to add, divide, and measure them. The astronomer comes into the lecture room, comes into the classroom loaded with a lot of diagrams and certain other teaching aids so that he might be able to deliver an impressive lecture to the students and the students may benefit themselves. When I, sitting, heard the astronomer where he lectured with much applause. Applause here means clapping, praise in the lecture room. All the other students sitting in the classroom applauded the lecture a lot, praised the astronomer a lot while delivering that lecture, because he delivered that lecture in a very good way. But on the other hand, how soon unaccountable, strange, puzzling, I became tired and sick. Sick means got fed up. On the other hand, the speaker, he got very puzzled. He got very bored. He could not understand what the astronomer was telling him because he was just giving to him all the theoretical knowledge, not the practical knowledge. That is the basic difference the poet wants to bring to us. Till rising and gliding out. So he gets up, he goes out of the lecture room. I wandered off. Wandered means walked, roam about. बाहर चलता फिरता हुआ चला गया. Off by myself in the mystical moist. Mystical means magical, spiritual. बहुत खूबसूरत यहाँ इसका मीनिंग है. Moist night air. Moist means wet, damp. And from time to time looked up in perfect silence. Perfect, complete silence at the stars. But he got bored in the classroom, but he came out of the lecture room after some time, and when he looked up at sky, that was moist night air. When he looked up in the sky, he saw a lot of stars in the sky. He got the experience of looking at the stars. That's why he recognized the beauty of stars. He looked at the stars in complete silence, in perfect silence. So he could understand the real meaning of the stars, but he could not understand anything while in the classroom. This is the basic difference the poet wants to bring to us. He wants to say that this poem serves to highlight the difference between the wisdom and knowledge. In this context of the poem, wisdom is the process of learning through experience and exploration. I mean, wisdom comes through experience. When you get some personal experience about some event, about something, you know the reality of the thing. As the speaker appreciates the wonders of night sky only when he practically looks at the stars at night. जब वो खुद सितारों को देखता है फिर उसे सितारों की हकीकत का सही पता चलता है. जबकि एस्ट्रोनॉमर जो क्लासरूम में था उसने जितनी भी चीज़ें दिखाई डायग्राम्स के ज़रिए से और चार्ट्स के ज़रिए से उसकी स्पीकर को समझ नहीं आई. बट at the end, when he himself comes out of the classroom and looks at the stars in the sky, he really acknowledges the beauty of nature. On the other hand, knowledge is just the name of cramming certain numbers, figures, and facts. This is the basic difference that you can learn from this poem, that if you learn something practically, it imprints in your mind. It becomes the part of your personality. You understand it in the best possible manner, and sometimes just by cramming certain figures and numbers you cannot get the real knowledge and wisdom. So the wisdom comes through practical. That's all of today's lecture, dear students. Dear students, page number 3 of your textbooks, When I Heard the Learned Astronomer. We'll start its exercises with part A. Part A is understanding the poem. Question number 1. Question number 1 is answer the following questions. A. In the first half of the poem, where is the poet? Answer is, in the first half of the poem, the poet is in a lecture room. In the first half of the poem, the poet is in a lecture room. B. Who is he with and what is he doing? Answer is, he is with an audience listening to a learned astronomer lecture. He is with an audience listening to a learned astronomer lecture. Now part C. Which words or phrases show that the astronomer is respected by the poet and the audience? The answer is the word learned and phrase with much applause show that the astronomer is respected by the poet and the audience. Learned and with much applause show that the astronomer is respected by the poet and the audience. D. What scientific tools and methods does the astronomer use? The scientific tools and methods that the astronomer uses are proofs and figures arranged in charts and diagrams used to add, divide, and measure. The scientific tools and methods that the astronomer uses are proofs and figures arranged in charts and diagrams used to add, divide, and measure. E. In the second half of the poem, where is the poet? The answer is, in the second half of the poem, the poet is outside. In the second half of the poem, the poet is outside. F. Who is he with and what is he doing? The answer is, he is alone and he is looking at the night sky. He is alone and he is looking at the night sky. Now G. What words and images in the first half of the poem are contrast to the perfect silence in the final line? यानी फाइनल लाइन में मुकम्मल खामोशी थी, सेकंड हाफ में मुकम्मल खामोशी थी, वो कैसे बिल्कुल उलट है फर्स्ट हाफ की निस्बत? The answer is, the words and images in the first half of the poem that contrast to the perfect silence in the final line are heard the learned astronomer and lectured with much applause. These clearly show that there was continuous noise during the lecture. In the first half of the poem there was noise, whereas in the second half of the poem there was complete silence. Why there was noise in the first half of the poem? Because the astronomer was delivering his lecture and the audience gave him a huge round of applause. It means there was continuous uproarious noise in the first half of the poem, whereas in the second half of the poem there was complete silence as the poet was alone outside and he was looking at the night sky. Last but not the least, H. What is the message of the poem? I must say a very important question. The poet suggests that science cannot show us the mystical wonder of nature. We must experience it for ourselves to see and feel the wonder and beauty of nature. Once again, the poet suggests that science cannot show us the mystical wonder of nature. We must experience it for ourselves. We must experience the nature for ourselves to see and feel the wonder and beauty of nature. Part B. Part B is working with words. Dear students, when speaking and in informal writing, people often use contraction. Contraction is where you do not write the full spelling of the word, rather you drop a letter or two letters. Where you drop a letter, you put an apostrophe there, or that is also called a flying comma. Examples, they may say, I don't like him. Don't is the contraction form of do not. Here O is missing, and where O is missing, there is a flying comma, as it is also called an apostrophe. M is the contraction form of them. So people might say, I don't like him instead of I do not like them. They may write, if they want to write something, sometimes they use contractions. He could have. This is the contraction form. They write he could have instead of he could have. This is the full formal writing, and it is informal writing. Or this is informal speech, and I do not like them is the formal speech. Number 1. Which three words does the poet contract? The answer is learned, wandered, looked. These are three words used in the poem by the poet. Number 2. What do they mean? What do these words mean? Number 1. Learned, well educated, बहुत ज़्यादा तालीम याफ्ता. Number 2. Wandered, roam about, आवारागर्दी करना, फिरना. 3. Looked, it means watched. Number 3. How should they be written, and how many syllables should they have? Learned should be written as learned. Learned has 2 syllables. Number 2. Wandered. Its complete form is wandered. It has 2 syllables. Wandered. Looked. It is the contraction form, and this is the full form of the word looked. It is of 1 syllable. So learned, its full form is learned. It has 2 syllables. Learned. Wandered, this is the contraction form, and this is the complete word. It has 2 syllables. Looked, this is the contraction form looked. E is missing, and there is an apostrophe over there. So it is contraction form, and the full word is looked. And it has 1 syllable. Looked has 1 syllable. Number 4. What are the 2 other words that Whitman could have contracted in the same way? What 2 words may be? Lectured. The contraction form of this word lectured may be like lectured. E is dropped here, and where E is dropped, there is an apostrophe. Or, as I have already told you, an apostrophe is also called a flying comma. Ranged. This is the full word, and this is the contraction of ranged. E is dropped. Where E is dropped, a flying comma there, an apostrophe is there. Dear students, now grouping words. Listen to me very carefully. Number 5. Whitman has used lots of pairs in the poem. For example, when he describes the calculations that the astronomer uses, the proofs, the figures, it is a pair, as both are connected with each other, both are for each other. It is a pair. Now the question is actually find 4 more examples of Whitman's use of pairs. Now we are to find 4 more examples that are the pairs used by the poet in the poem. Whitman has used lots of pairs in the poem. One is the charts and diagrams. You know, both are connected with each other. It is a pair. Number 2, tired and sick. It is another pair because both the words almost have the same meanings. Number 3, rising and gliding. It is another pair, almost have the same meaning. Rising, uthna, gliding, chale jana. यहाँ इसका मतलब ये होगा. Number 4, time to time. Again, it is another pair. So these are 4 pairs used by the poet Walt Whitman in the poem. Number 6. Can you also find a trio of verbs he has used? Here he is for the poet of the poem, that is Walt Whitman. Can you also find a trio of verbs he has used? It means 3 words. Yes, to divide, to add, divide and measure. To add, divide and measure. It is a trio of verbs. All the 3 words are verbs. Number 7. Find 2 examples of alliteration. What is alliteration? Alliteration is repetition of the same sounds or of the same kinds of sounds at the beginning of words or in stressed syllables that draw attention to keywords and images. जो शायर होते हैं वो अक्सर एलिट्रेशन का इस्तेमाल करते हैं. वो ऐसे वर्ड्स यूज़ करते हैं जिनकी साउंड सेम होती है, जिसकी वजह से पोइट्री में एक नगमगी पैदा होती है, एक म्यूज़िक क्रिएट होता है, राइम और रिदम जो है वो बहुत खूबसूरत हो जाते हैं. तो एलिट्रेशन का यूज़ बहुत से पोइट्स जो हैं वो करते हैं. व्हाट इज़ द एलिट्रेशन? सून एंड सिक. Both the words start with the S sound. That's why it is called alliteration. Mystical, moist. Both have the same sound. Mystical and moist. Then time to time. Time and time both start with the same letter T. Fourth is silence and stars. If you see, both these words have the same sound. Silence S, stars S. So these are called the pairs in the form of alliteration. So alliteration, once again I want to tell you, repetition of the same sounds or of the same kinds of sounds at the beginning of words are in stressed syllables that draw attention to keywords and images. Part C. Part C is learning about language. Dear students, learning about language is about adjective phrase. So first of all, I would like to discuss what an adjective is and then what an adjective phrase is. Adjective. A word that adds something to the meaning of a noun or a pronoun is called adjective. It can be defined as a word that describes a noun or a pronoun is called an adjective. An adjective has 3 degrees that compare one thing with another. For example, Ali is an honest boy. Boy is a noun and honest is a word that describes the noun boy. So the word that describes a noun is called adjective. Honest is an adjective. He is wise. He is a pronoun and wise is a word that describes a pronoun he. So wise is an adjective. Adjective has 3 degrees as I have already mentioned here. Kinds of adjectives first. First degree is called positive degree. Second degree is called comparative degree. And third degree is called superlative degrees. First of all, 1 or 2 syllable adjectives. Syllable is the unit that is used to pronounce a word. Smart. Smart is a 1 syllabled word. It has 1 syllable. Smart. It has 1 unit to pronounce the complete word smart. Its comparative degree is smarter and superlative degree is smartest. Smart, smarter, smartest. Able. Able is a 2 syllabled word. It means able has 2 syllables. Able. A1, able 2. Able. Abler, ablest. You might have observed that in 1 or 2 syllable adjectives, we added er or est to make its comparative and superlative degrees. Then polysyllable adjectives that have more than 2 syllables. Beautiful. Beautiful has 3 syllables. Beau 1, T 2, full 3. It has 3 units, 3 syllables. Beautiful, more beautiful, most beautiful. Then important. Important is also 3 syllabled adjective. Important, more important, most important. You might have observed that polysyllabled adjectives take more and most to make comparative and superlative degrees. There are certain other adjectives which are called irregular adjectives. They do not take er or est or more and most to make comparative and superlative degrees. They have their own method. For example, good, better, best, bad, ill, evil. If they are used as adjective, they have the same comparative and superlative degrees, that is worse, worst. For example, bad, worse, worst, ill, worse, worst, evil, worse, worst. I hope you might have got the concept of adjectives here, then how to make their comparative and superlative degrees. Dear students, we have just discussed adjective. Now adjective phrase. First of all, definition of adjective phrase. An adjective phrase is a group of words. Keep it in mind, group of words, not one word, rather group of words that describes a noun or pronoun in a sentence. The adjective phrase can be placed before or after the noun or pronoun in a sentence. For example, he attended an important meeting yesterday. Important is an adjective that describes the noun meeting. This important, that is adjective here, can be changed into adjective phrase. How? See that. He attended a meeting of some importance yesterday. So of some importance is not one word, it has 3 words. This is a phrase, as this phrase describes the noun meeting. That's why it is called adjective phrase. See some more example. The injured horse did not run in the race. Injured is an adjective that is describing the noun horse. This can be changed into adjective phrase as well. The horse with an injury did not run in the race. With an injury is an adjective phrase. Let's see one more example. The dark-haired boy is my cousin. Dark-haired is an adjective that is describing a noun boy. This can be changed into adjective phrase. Let's see how. The boy with the dark hair is my cousin. With the dark hair is an adjective phrase. I hope you might have got the idea of adjective and adjective phrase. Now let's discuss the questions. Question number 1. Question number 1 is, in each of the following sentences, there is an adjective phrase which begins with the preposition of, with, in, etc. Underline each phrase. A. The balloon with the yellow stripes burst loudly. Here is a noun, that is balloon, and with the yellow stripes is an adjective phrase that describes the noun balloon. So with the yellow stripes is an adjective phrase. B. The dog under the table was growling at the cat on the chair. I give you the clue. Here are 2 adjective phrases. Number 1, under the table. Under the table is an adjective phrase that describes the dog, that is a noun. And the other adjective phrase is on the chair. On the chair is an adjective phrase that tells something about the cat. The cat is a noun here. C. Those hills in the distance form the border between the 2 countries. Here again there are 2 adjective phrases here. Number 1, in the distance. In the distance is an adjective phrase that describes the noun hills. Form the border between the 2 countries. Between the 2 countries is an adjective phrase that gives some information about the noun border. Border is a noun and between the 2 countries is an adjective phrase. D. We went to visit the man with the large garden. We went to visit the man with the large garden. With the large garden is an adjective phrase that describes the noun man. E. She spoke to the woman in the green dress yesterday. She spoke to the woman in the green dress yesterday. In the green dress is an adjective phrase that describes the noun woman. F. The love between mother and child is very strong. The love between mother and child is very strong. Adjective phrase is between mother and child. It is an adjective phrase that describes the noun love. The love between mother and child is very strong. G. That is the last but not the least. The artist's painting of the sea and the hills was sold for a vast sum. The artist's painting of the sea and the hills was sold for a vast sum. Here adjective phrase is of the sea and the hills. It is an adjective phrase that describes the noun painting. There is another adjective phrase that is for a vast sum. This is an adjective phrase that is describing the painting. Now move towards the next and last question. Question number 2. Question number 2 is, can you find 3 examples of adjective phrases in the poem? Yes, why not? Number 1, before me. Number 2, in the lecture room. Number 3, at the stars. Number 1, before me is an adjective phrase. In the lecture room is an adjective phrase. And at the stars is an adjective phrase. That's all of today's lecture, dear students. I hope you might have understood all the concepts discussed in this poem, When I Heard the Learned Astronomer, composed by Walt Whitman. Dear students, I would advise you to go through this video lecture once again for better understanding. If you have any question, if you have any problem, you may comment in the comment section, and inshallah I'll be there to answer your questions. Till some next lecture, take a very good care of yourselves and your dear ones. Thank you very much.